I found a note tucked under my windshield wiper, the kind written in smudged ballpoint on a piece of torn receipt paper. It said, "If anything happens to me, take the kid to Nathan." And underneath that, just one word, like a signature, Jason. It had been 2 months since anyone had seen him. Jason, my brother. The one who always had a hustle, a half-truth, and a story you couldn't quite believe but somehow wanted to. He'd vanished like smoke in late August. No forwarding address. No goodbye. Just gone. And now here I was, standing in the parking lot of my apartment complex, staring at this tiny scrap of warning like it might catch fire in my hands. The last time we spoke, he was panicked, not frantic, but quiet panicked. The kind where someone's voice goes still, and you realize they're saying goodbye without using the word. I remember him saying he had to go away for a bit, that things were getting complicated, and that if I heard anything, I should stay out of it. Then, before hanging up, he said something that didn't make sense until this moment: "If anything happens to me, take the kid to Nathan." I'm Nathan. And until 3 days ago, I didn't know Jason had a kid. The knock came just before midnight. I was half asleep, the TV still humming, some old baseball game rerun crackling in the background. I opened the door expecting maybe a neighbor, maybe a delivery mix-up. Instead, it was Brooke, looking like a shadow of herself, pale and rain-drenched, holding a little boy to her side like he was made of glass. "He's yours now," she said. No hello. No explanation. Just that. The boy was maybe 5 or 6 at most. Big brown eyes, the kind that scan the room like they're already used to disappointment. He didn't speak. Just gripped a worn dinosaur backpack and looked down at his shoes. Brooke didn't stay long. She didn't cry. She handed me a small duffel bag, kissed the boy on the head, and told him, "Be good for Uncle Nate." Then she left. I tried her number. Disconnected. Her socials, gone. Like she'd erased herself on purpose. No answers. No map. Just me, a kid I'd never met, and a sentence I couldn't forget: "If anything happens to me." That night, I couldn't sleep. He didn't either. He curled up on the couch, back to the cushions, eyes wide open. I sat in the armchair across from him, watching his chest rise and fall like a question no one could answer. I didn't know what I was yet, not a father, not a guardian. But I knew this: someone had trusted me with something sacred. And someone else, maybe more than one, didn't want that trust to hold. Because when I checked my front door in the morning, there were muddy boot prints on the welcome mat. Ones that hadn't been there before. And just like that, the story began. The first thing I noticed the next morning was how quiet the apartment felt. Not peaceful quiet, alert quiet. The kind that hums behind your ears like a warning. The kid, his name was Cole, I'd learn later, hadn't moved much during the night. When I made coffee and scrambled some eggs, he just sat there, arms around his knees on the couch, like he was afraid moving would make the whole thing less real. I offered him food. He didn't answer, just nodded once and picked at the plate. He didn't talk. Not then. Not with words, anyway. But kids have their own language, in glances, in the way they flinch when you reach for something too fast, in how tightly they hold the one object they trust. For Cole, that object was the backpack. He wouldn't let it out of his sight. Not to eat, not to brush his teeth, not even to use the bathroom. Finally, while he was watching cartoons and I was pretending not to watch him, I unzipped it quietly when he set it down beside the couch. Inside, it was mostly what you'd expect: a change of clothes, some granola bars, a small flashlight, a worn-out stuffed alligator with one eye missing. But at the very bottom, taped inside the lining, was a photo. Old. Creased in the corners. It was Jason. And holding Cole, a baby then. He was just a baby in Jason's arms, maybe 6 months old at most. I must have assumed it was a friend's baby, or just didn't look close enough back then. There was a date scribbled in Jason's handwriting, March 14, 2021. And a note, nearly illegible, "If you're reading this, I'm probably not coming back. Nathan, trust no one. Not even her. Find Maddox." Maddox. The name hit me like a brick through a windshield. Jasper Maddox was a name I hadn't heard in years, not since Jason worked a job with a construction outfit that folded under shady circumstances. Jason had said he quit. Said Maddox wasn't who he claimed to be. I'd chalked it up to Jason being Jason, always convinced he was the smartest guy in a room full of crooks. But now I was starting to wonder if he'd been right all along. That night, after Cole was asleep, finally, curled up with the alligator clutched to his chest, I called a friend of mine from back in the day. Marcus. Used to be a beat cop before he blew the whistle on some internal stuff and got himself benched into early retirement. He still had connections. I told him the name. Maddox. Asked him to dig around. "Why?" he asked. "Because my brother's missing," I said. And he told me Maddox might have had something to do with it. Marcus was quiet for a long beat. "I'll see what I can find." I didn't sleep again that night. Not because of the couch. Not because of Cole kicking in his sleep. But because I couldn't stop thinking about the note. Not even her. Brooke had dropped off Cole like a package with no return address. No car waiting. No explanation. Just, disappeared. But if Jason didn't trust her, not fully, then what was she really doing here? Why now? And then there was the other question, the one I hadn't dared ask. Why me? Jason and I hadn't been close in years. We'd shared blood, not always trust. So why did he choose me to take care of Cole? Why not someone else? Unless he knew Maddox would come looking for the boy, and I was the only one left who'd actually protect him, no matter the cost. The next morning, Marcus called me back. "Nathan," he said, voice tight. "You need to be careful." "Why?" "Because Maddox. He's not just building condos anymore. Word is he's running money through shell companies tied to city contracts. Stuff that goes way higher than people want to admit. Your brother may have stumbled onto something bigger than he realized." "What about Jason?" I asked. "Anything?" There was a pause. Then, "I think he was trying to leak something. There's chatter about a file, a drive. Something Maddox doesn't want made public." My heart thudded once, slow and heavy. "I think he left it with me," I said. And as I looked over at Cole, still asleep, still small and breakable in a world too loud, I realized something that chilled me deeper than I'd expected. Whatever Jason found, whatever Maddox was hiding, this kid was the leverage. And someone would come looking. The knock came at 2:42 p.m. on a Thursday. Not a neighbor's knock. Not a package drop. It was too measured. Too calm. Like someone wanted me to know they weren't in a rush, like they knew I was on the other side of the door and that I'd have to open it eventually. Cole was on the floor, coloring with a red crayon and chewing on his bottom lip like it held all the answers he wasn't ready to speak. He didn't flinch, but I saw it in his eyes, that quiet flicker of fear he hadn't learned to hide yet. I told him to stay put, got up, and opened the door. The man standing there didn't smile. He was dressed too clean for this side of town, dark coat, pressed slacks, shoes that had never touched a playground. He looked like he belonged to the kind of office where people never raised their voices, they just signed checks that did the yelling for them. "Nathan Carter?" he asked. "Who's asking?" He reached into his coat, slow, practiced, and pulled out a business card. "Simon Voss, Regional Safety Consultant, Maddox Development Corp." The name chilled my blood. Maddox. It was the first time I'd heard it spoken out loud in years. "I'm following up on a safety concern involving one of our former employees," he said. "Jason Carter." I said nothing. Just let the silence stretch like wire between us. He was flagged for accessing internal files without authorization. We're conducting interviews for legal reasons. It's likely nothing, but the company likes to be thorough. We were hoping you might be able to help us locate him. He said, help, like it tasted wrong. I leaned against the doorframe. Haven't seen Jason in over a year. That was true, at least, in the way that mattered. Voss nodded, like he'd expected the answer. Like this part of the script was routine. If you hear from him, he said, we'd appreciate a call. He slid the card into my hand, then met my eyes for one long, quiet second. Not a stare. A measurement. He was trying to figure out if I was bluffing. Then he turned and walked down the hall. Not hurried. Not defeated. Just, done. But here's what got me, he didn't ask any follow-up questions. Didn't press. Didn't even pretend to care who else might be in the apartment. And that told me something Jason used to say when he was still the kind of person who borrowed your truck without asking and came back with a full tank. The ones who talk too much are trying to sell something. The ones who talk too little already know what they came for. I closed the door, bolted it, and turned around. Cole was staring at me, eyes wide, crayon dropped. Who was that? He asked, his first word since arriving. I knelt in front of him. Someone asking about your dad. He didn't say anything, just looked down. I should have told him everything. Or nothing. But I gave him the worst answer you can give a child. Don't worry about it. That night, I waited until he was asleep, this time in the spare bedroom, the one I'd cleared out in a daze, folding old shirts into boxes like it would make room for something better. Then I took out the flash drive. The one I'd found hidden in the lining of Cole's backpack, taped between the fabric and a piece of cardboard stiffener. It was small. Black. No labels. Just a plain USB stick like any other. I plugged it into my laptop. It took a second. Then a folder opened. Inside, dozens of files. Names. Dates. Blueprints. Email chains. Bribery records. Off-the-books payments to inspectors, photos of collapsed beams, emails marked urgent with no replies. One folder was labeled Hollow Point. Inside that, photos of a building site in East Houston. Concrete slabs splitting under pressure. Workers without safety gear. A contract dated 8 months ago, with Jason's digital signature at the bottom. Either he lied, or someone kept using his credentials after he vanished. Either way, it meant he was more tangled in this than I'd ever realized. And there, buried at the bottom, was a video clip. Jason. Standing in a hard hat, facing the camera. If you're seeing this, he said, it means I didn't get out in time. Maddox is laundering through build sites. Money goes in, corners get cut, and nobody asks why things fall apart. But they're gonna keep doing it, and worse, if no one stops them. I couldn't walk away. Not when I saw what I saw. I'm leaving everything I found with Cole. He's the only thing I've done right. Nathan, if anyone can protect him, it's you. Just, don't let them find him. He looked behind him, like someone was coming. Then the video cut. I sat there, staring at the blank screen. And I knew, without a doubt, that Voss's visit wasn't just about locating Jason. It was about silencing whatever Jason left behind. And Cole. Cole wasn't just a kid anymore. He was the last witness. The next morning, Cole handed me a picture. Crayon on notebook paper. Mostly red and green, with a crooked building in the center and what looked like a tree off to the left. At first, I thought it was just a kid's drawing, some half-remembered playground or cartoon background. But then I saw it. In the corner, just barely legible in red, J14. A letter and 2 numbers that didn't make sense in a child's world, but in mine. It was a punch to the chest. Because Jason and I used to have a code. When we were kids, we made fake treasure maps and left them around the neighborhood. And if we didn't want anyone else to find them, we labeled the important ones with that exact kind of code, first initial, and the day of the month. J14 meant Jason, the 14th. And today was the 14th. I stared at the drawing again. That crooked building? It wasn't a building. It was a warehouse. The tree wasn't a tree. It was a tower crane. I recognized the site. East Side. Used to be a textile mill before Maddox's crew started turning it into luxury condos. The project stalled midsummer. Rumor was a contractor got hurt. Quiet settlement. No press. And now it sat half demolished, fenced off with "No trespassing" signs, and the kind of silence that didn't just come from abandonment, but warning. Cole watched me, eyes wide and unblinking. He hadn't spoken again since yesterday. But he didn't need to. He was telling me where to go. I didn't take him with me, obviously. Dropped him with Marcus for a few hours. Told him we were playing it safe. Marcus didn't ask questions. He just nodded, locked the door, and sat the kid down with cartoons and a grilled cheese. The warehouse was 20 minutes out. As I pulled up, I noticed two things right away. First, the gate wasn't locked. Just chained to look that way, a classic Jason move. Second, there was a single white van parked near the back. Unmarked. Tires dusty. Still warm. Someone was here. Or had been. I parked behind the old delivery dock and slipped through the side entrance, flashlight in one hand, Jason's warning looping in my head like a bad song. Don't let them find him. The inside of the warehouse was quiet, that kind of quiet that hums like it's holding its breath. Rusted beams overhead. Half-poured concrete floors. Scaffolding stacked like skeletons against the far wall. And then I saw it. In the center of the floor, just past a stack of unused drywall, was a desk. Fold out. Basic. Covered in papers. I walked over slowly, scanning the space as I moved. There were no cameras, no lights, just that damn hum, and the feeling that someone had been here just long enough to leave in a hurry. On the desk were printouts. The same files from the drive. Only now they were highlighted, marked with notes. Phrases circled. False permits issued June 2022. Payoff to inspection team, $50,000. Collapse predicted within 8 mo's. There was a manila envelope, half open. Inside, a second flash drive. Labeled in red Sharpie, "T.O. Press if I'm gone." Jason had planned everything. He knew he might disappear. And he made sure this didn't. I grabbed the drive, stuffed it in my jacket, and turned. Footsteps. Not mine. Fast. Heavy. I ducked behind the drywall just as the warehouse door slammed open. Voices. 2 of them. Male. Low. One barked something I couldn't hear clearly. The other laughed. I didn't wait to hear more. I slipped along the edge of the scaffolding, heart in my throat, feet silent. They were moving toward the desk. I was already near the back exit when I heard one of them say, "He's been here. The prints are fresh. Carter's brother, maybe." The other one answered, "Doesn't matter. Find the kid." I froze. That one sentence, "find the kid," hit like a gunshot in the dark. Because it confirmed everything. This wasn't cleanup. It was escalation. Jason had vanished. The drive was meant for me. But Cole. Cole was leverage. Evidence. Insurance. And now. He was a target. I slipped out the back and didn't look back. Drove like hell back to Marcus's, every worst-case scenario crashing through my brain like broken glass. When I got there, Marcus had locked every door and drawn every curtain. Cole was asleep on the couch, the alligator still clutched tight. I told Marcus everything. About the men. The desk. The voice that said, "Find the kid." His jaw clenched, the kind of stillness men only get when they're deciding between fight and run. "You think they'll come here?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. "But I'm not waiting to find out." He looked at Cole. "Then we make a move. Fast. Quiet. And permanent." That night, we packed the car. No notes. No goodbyes. Because I wasn't just Nathan anymore. I was the last name Jason trusted. The only shield left between Cole and a storm too big for him to even see coming. And I was going to finish what my brother started. No matter what it cost. We left at dawn. Not the romantic kind of dawn you see in movies. This one was gray, thick with fog, the sort of morning that feels like the world forgot to wake up. Cole sat buckled in the back seat, half asleep, his stuffed alligator wedged tight against his ribs. Marcus drove. I rode shotgun, eyes fixed on the side mirror like I expected it to scream. We didn't speak much. Every word felt like it had weight we couldn't afford. The plan was simple. Hide the kid. Buy time. Get the evidence somewhere safe, somewhere Maddox couldn't reach. Marcus knew a guy upstate, ex-federal investigator turned small-town librarian. Said he owed him a favor that could cash his credibility. Said he could get the files where they needed to go without setting off alarms. But simple plans have a way of dragging old ghosts out of hiding. About halfway up the highway, Cole finally spoke. "My dad's not dead." Not a question. Just a child's stubborn faith, delivered with the same certainty you'd expect from a kid insisting dinosaurs still live under the bed. I looked back at him. He stared out the window, his small hand tracing the fog on the glass. "No," I said. "I don't think he is either." And the truth is, I didn't. Jason had always had a way of slipping out of messes with nothing more than a bruised ego and a clever story. But this time felt different. This wasn't a bar tab or a bad poker game. This was corporate sabotage. This was money. Power. Blood. But still, some part of me hoped. Because that kid in the back seat needed to believe his dad hadn't just vanished into thin air, that he hadn't been swallowed whole by the darkness he tried to expose. We stopped at a rest area around midday. Marcus took a call, walked far enough to be polite, but close enough I could hear the tension in his voice. I kept Cole near me, let him pick a juice and a pack of gummy bears. He smiled for the first time in days. Then I saw the SUV. Black. Tinted windows. No plates. Parked too neatly. Idle too long. I nudged Marcus. He didn't ask why. Just nodded, grabbed the keys, and we were moving again in under 2 minutes. By the time we were back on the road, Cole had fallen asleep with one gummy bear still stuck to his cheek. "Who was that?" I asked. Marcus tightened his grip on the wheel. "Don't know. But I'd bet half my pension they weren't here for the vending machines." We got to the safe house late. It was quiet, perched on a hillside surrounded by trees so dense it felt like stepping into another time. The man waiting on the porch looked like he hadn't slept in days, thin frame, steel gray beard, eyes that carried stories no one asked him to tell. "Trent," Marcus said, offering a hand. "Thanks for doing this." Trent nodded. No smile. Just took one look at Cole and said, "Let's get him inside." While Marcus and Trent went over the files, I sat with Cole by the fireplace. He stared at the flames like they were telling him something he couldn't quite understand. "You know what my dad said before he left?" he asked. I shook my head. "He said you were the only person he trusted. That you used to build forts in the garage. That one time, you let him take the blame when you broke the neighbor's window." I laughed, quietly, but it was real. Yeah. He cried harder than I did. Said he owed me for life. Cole looked up. Do you think that's why he picked you? 'Cause you always took the hit. I thought about that. About Jason, all swagger and sharp edges. The kind of guy who always ran toward the fire, but who never really had a plan to put it out. Maybe, I said. Or maybe because he knew I wouldn't run this time. Cole nodded, then leaned against my side, small and warm and brave in the way only children can be. The next morning, Trent made copies of everything, digital and physical. One set was scheduled to auto-send to 2 separate newsrooms and 1 federal office. Time delayed. Triggered by a password and a clock. Just in case, he said. I asked what the odds were that Maddox would back off once this went public. He didn't answer. Didn't have to. Because we both knew the kind of men who fear exposure don't go quietly. They burn the house down. And we were still inside it. The story ended the way most don't, not with sirens, not with justice marching through a courthouse door, but with a knock. Not like the one that started all this. Not quiet. Not patient. This one came just after midnight. Loud. Fast. Urgent. Trent opened the back door, gun in hand. Marcus was already moving before I could speak. I grabbed Cole, held him close. He didn't cry. He just clung to me, like he knew something bigger than him was closing in. But it wasn't Maddox. It was Jason. Barefoot. Pale. Eyes hollow. He staggered in like he'd crawled out of the earth. Trent raised the gun for a split second, then lowered it, eyes narrowing. You've got 5 seconds to explain why I shouldn't think this is a trap. Don't turn on the lights, he whispered. They followed me. Not far behind. We locked the house down. Jason collapsed on the floor, mumbling about safe houses, betrayals, a name we didn't recognize, someone inside Maddox's circle who flipped when the files leaked. He'd been hiding, running, waiting for the press to catch wind. He'd heard the files were triggered. That meant he was running out of time. They'll want to clean up, he said, before it spreads too far. I didn't ask why he came here. I already knew. Because no matter what else was true, Jason believed in one thing: if the end was coming, he wanted his son safe. A voicemail had come in 2 days earlier. No voice. Just breathing. I thought maybe, but I couldn't let myself believe. That night, we waited in the dark. No one came. Maybe the storm passed us. Maybe the files did their job. Or maybe Maddox had enough to lose now that the shadow felt like enough punishment. In the morning, Jason stood at the porch with Cole in his arms. They didn't speak, not really, just looked at each other like they'd memorized the other's face. Then Jason looked at me. You kept him safe, he said. No, I told him. He kept me going. He nodded. I've got to disappear for good this time. You know that. I did. And I knew what he meant when he said goodbye, not just to me, but to who he used to be. When he walked down that hill, I didn't follow. Cole stood beside me, silent. A new life stretched out in front of us, quieter, maybe. But rooted in something real. Trust. Truth. And the kind of love you don't run from. The kind you show up for. Even when it breaks you open.